Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Ask Kati Anything. Now, today, you're not just asking me, you're asking the amazing and talented Cheryl Burke. Cheryl, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well,
How would they know you?
Thanks for having me on. I'm a huge fan, as I know many are, of your podcast and your YouTube channel and all of it. So a little bit about me. Okay, my name is Cheryl Burke. I'm from the Bay Area. I started dancing at age 4, switched to, so I started ballet at age 4, switched to ballroom dancing at age 11, and have been on Dancing with the Stars for over 25 seasons. I've been on the show since 2006. I haven't been on every single season, but we are about, not we, because I don't know if I'm on yet, but like they're about to celebrate season 30 coming up this fall. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And I'm a huge advocate, as you know, if any of my followers are listening, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. I've been in therapy since I was 4, and I'm still currently in therapy, and I love therapists. So this is probably why I'm here.
That's wonderful. Wow. I didn't realize Dancing with the Stars has had that many seasons.
I know.
It feels like a lot of seasons, but at the same time, when you said that, I was like,
well, we do.
I feel old also.
Tell me about it.
Oh,
my hips want to slap me across the face. But yeah, we do 2 a year. We did do 2 a year. So it's only been on for about 15 years, but still, like, to hear season 30, you only like hear about that with friends or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, even twice a year, because I remember when it started, but then again, I'm 37. So it's
right.
like,
Same. I'm about to be 37 in May. Yeah.
Oh, it's a good year. I don't have any complaints.
Okay, good. Good to know.
So far, so good.
Good.
So mental health. Okay, you started therapy at 4.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. Why?
Well, yeah. I mean, people always ask, like, oh, is there a date or a age that's too young to start? And I always say no, because I don't actually believe there is. But what prompted it?
Okay, so my parents got divorced when I was 2 years old. My very first memory as a kid was my dad having sex with his secretary. I know it wasn't it wasn't like, I keep asking like my husband and people around me, like, what was your first memory? And they're like, it was a fun, like my grandma picking me out of the crib. I was like, oh, great. Mine's like real dark. And then after that, unfortunately, I got sexually molested by our nanny. We had 2, right? So we had one that drove us around everywhere, and he was the one that did that. And then I had a Filipina nanny that my mom basically hired from when I was born, you know, because she was busy working and trying to put food on the table. And so as soon as that happened, which I think I was like, my timeline just sucks. And I think that's part of me numbing, but like it was like 6, 7 was when that started. And then I testified against him and all of that. And it was just trauma that I needed to let out and talk about. But like, I'm an introverted person at heart, you know, and I was very quiet, which I think this is why dancing for me has been like my therapy, and it has been very therapeutic. But like, for some reason, when I put on a rhinestone dance costume and lashes, like I could totally just express myself. But when you ask me a question, it has been hard for me to express and be communicative, I guess, through words. And which is something that I'm currently trying to work through, as far as like showing vulnerability through, you know, talking about my feelings, feeling my feelings. I recently got into meditation, which I find that has helped me a lot. And obviously just having the experience on Dancing with the Stars. When I first moved here, I just did not have an opinion or a voice. The ballroom industry in itself is pretty much a man's world. So I was always like the follower, you know, I would never led anything, and no one cared to ask for my opinion. It's kind of just the way it is, you know? And so coming here, when they were trying to interview me for the first time, and by the way, it was never my goal to be on television. It just so happened that, you know, they asked me to audition after the first season. And I was planning on going back to Harlem, where I was training and continuing on my dance career. And then, you know, from season 2 to now season 30, I'm still here, still kicking. But yeah, they really helped me. The production value, like just in itself, helped me just be able to like communicate with a camera in my face. But that has helped express, you know, and learn how to express my feelings through words. So,
yeah, no, I mean, that's really great. And not for nothing, there is science to back up why expressing things through our body feels so good. Like, I'm sure you've heard of like somatic experiencing therapy.
I'm trying to develop actually a dance program called like a therapeutic experience. I'm not a therapist, obviously. So, but there is a therapeutic aspect to movement for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And it, when that's developed, you let me know, because I'd love to let people know about it.
Maybe you could be involved.
I'd love to be.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Even when I used to work at I worked at many eating disorder treatment centers over the years. And one of my favorite parts of it was the fact that we had a woman come in who did like trauma informed yoga and
That's
body,
so cool.
and helping people get back in their bodies, because I think we can feel, especially trauma, or even just talking about eating disorders as a whole, some of them are caused by trauma, not all of them. But I think there's definitely this disconnect, right?
Especially
like,
in
I don't
this
wanna
business.
I don't want to be in my body
Yeah.
because it's uncomfortable. It reminds me of certain things, or, it doesn't matter how I feel. It just matters that I do this thing.
And that's this pattern that's scary, because like, even though I can say all these things like therapy talk, because I've been in a way just in it for so long, I sometimes take a step back and I'm like, am I really like practicing what I'm preaching, sometimes. And I think I'm so disconnected, and it's so easy for me to put a face on or words to even just a feeling that I'm supposed to be feeling, but not necessarily feeling.
Oh, 100%. And I'm just as guilty.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's just you. I always tell my audience, I'm like, just because I know better doesn't mean I do better.
Right.
Which
I've
comes
always
along with
wondered
its
about
own-
therapists. I'm like, are you guys just perfect or?
Not at all. And I've been in therapy off and on since I was 15.
Okay.
And so I definitely started earlier than some, but it comes with it. It helps because then I'm aware, but the doing is always the hard part. Right. And life doesn't always allow us to like or it's not even life doesn't allow us. I don't always want to let my guard down. Right. Right.
No,
Especially
totally.
in entertainment.
I feel you. Yeah. And even like my mother's Filipino, and just the culture in the Philippines, it's not to show any vulnerability equals weakness. And we all know Brene Brown, like it's so not, right? It's strength and courage. And it's fucking hard to show.
It's so hard.
Oh my God. I can't even.
Because nobody wants to be hurt.
No.
That's the thing.
Or cry.
Yes, especially publicly. Like I've done a couple of videos, especially around quarantine when it was happening, where I was just overwhelmed with grief and like couldn't even watch the news, and I would cry.
Right.
And I made those videos, and I love Brene Brown. And she talks about vulnerability hangovers, right? You've put yourself out there, and then you're like, shit.
You're like, was my cry ugly, or was it
right? Was I Kim Kardashian crying or what?
That's the main thing.
And like, are people going to judge me because I'm too vulnerable now? I can't shut it back.
I have built such a thick wall, even with my husband. Like we're trying to work through this. Like I can come across really harsh and like overly confident, but really it's overly insecure, right? And like that's just my teaching style as well. Like I'm just a realist. Like dream, like what is a dream? Like I don't really dream and live in la la land, but like not like it's a bad thing. I wish I could, but I'm just so like hardcore in that sense that it's just a cover up. Like that doesn't equal strength for sure.
Totally. It's a defense mechanism, right? It's helped us get through.
Or I go to sarcasm and just like super dry humor, and it's so hard not to do that.
It is. I hope we can be friends, because that sounds
we are
very
friends
fun.
already.
I love the
I was friends with you before you even knew me.
I hear that from a lot of people. And that's the funny thing about putting yourself out there online, is that people can know you before you know them.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's just it's a very interesting phenomenon. But
yeah. And like also you just feel like sometimes you're alone, right? You're just like, am I going crazy? Because like I feel like I'm going, because like I just realized during this pandemic, I have social anxiety like so much so, which is why I used to drink like crazy. It just would help me, like even going to like red carpets. I'm never going to get used to this. This is a weird life. Like it's just weird. And like, I don't understand how people love it. Even social media, it's hard. Like to let, even that's vulnerable for me. And then everyone's like, how are you shaking your ass and half naked? And I'm like, even that's vulnerable. Like, I have body image issues, and I've got issues, but I find that very interesting. When you don't have issues, or I don't think there's such thing, but when you say you don't, you're just like boring to me. So
yeah, I mean, we all have issues. I think it's like, I always talk about how we're all like under construction or like works in progress. Yeah. Some of us are just aware and have put up the cones, and others of us are just like,
run away,
get close to us at your own peril, potentially. Yeah. We don't know.
My therapist was saying to me the other day, some people just they're okay with living not knowing in the unknown. And I'm like, wow, there is another, because like I have a tendency to either be black or white. Like there's no gray area for me. It's either like balls to the walls or just go home. And it's scary for me to actually admit, because like there is a gray area, and I tend to be judgmental towards it for some reason.
Well, I mean, I feel like if for those of us who strive to be better, do better, know more about ourselves, like anything, it's hard to imagine another version.
Right? Like how do you not want to do that? Yeah.
I know. And it is hard. And I honestly, I mean, as a therapist, I can't imagine that, but I know people who are like that.
And they're fine.
And they're just not my people, right? And
totally.
There's no judgment. It's just like, I always talk about how toxic relationships aren't always that the other person's toxic. It's just you're a bad recipe. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Tomatoes, you're peanut butter.
Yeah.
Ugh. Those never go together.
No, gross. Or like mayonnaise and pasta. My dance coach did that. That was nasty.
Ooh, that is nasty. Yeah. But again, not a good recipe.
No, but like whatever tickles your pickle.
Totally. And you'll find another person who likes that flavor, and it just works. And so,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also believe like we evolve as humans. Like your body changes every 7 years for sure. Like mine changes drastically. I can't even tell you. Yeah. Like I think the main reason, like my dad passed away in 2018. And I think like ever since his death, so he was an alcoholic. I am an addict. Even though my therapist doesn't think so, but we can talk about that later.
We totally can.
And I was either going to, when he passed away, I was either going to like freaking just hit rock bottom and check myself into rehab, or I was going to quit cold turkey. And I decided it was like a promise within myself just to quit. I didn't even tell my husband. We just got engaged during that time. And it's crazy because I just see like, it's just a different perspective. I think this pandemic has really helped me like take a step back and just like, okay, really turn inward, even though it's uncomfortable as shit. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't even know why I brought this up. What were we talking about?
No, you're fine. I love it. I love all of this. We started off, if we track all the way back, about starting therapy.
Right.
And like your process. And so we kind of talked through it a little bit, but do you have any memories of like child therapy, like when you were like 4?
Well, I was really quiet. So my mom thought I was deaf because I didn't talk at all, right? So there were 2 different languages being spoken at the house, Tagalog.
Yeah, Tagalog.
Yeah, and I spoke back to my nanny in English, and like Pretty Woman was being like shown because like she loved the movie. Probably wasn't like the best thing to like have me watch, but it's my favorite.
I love that film.
But not I watched at 4.
No. I mean, I watched it at like 10 or 12 and still didn't understand part of it.
Right. But then like I see old VHS tapes because, I have my own YouTube channel. So I was going through old footage, which is very entertaining for those of you at home that are just so bored. Do that. And I saw myself. It was so surreal. Saw myself like looking at the mirror and like, do I look pretty, Mom? Like I was like, oh no. It was like between Dynasty, Pretty Woman, and Sound of Music, which is definitely more age appropriate, the last one. But it's just really, it's crazy because I remember when I was in therapy, I didn't say much at all. Like it was like, I think I was obviously traumatized. And, when the sexual abuse was happening when I was a little girl, it happened for a couple years before I even spoke up. So
what prompted you to speak up? Because I hear that a lot. And, and it's always, as someone on the outside who really wants to help people, it's always hard for me to hear.
Right.
And I know from my viewers and my patients alike, they always worry about safety because sometimes they'll threaten things.
Yeah.
Or they worry that it was their fault. And I don't know if that falls in line.
Yes, absolutely. I went through all of that. But actually, what's sad is that we didn't speak up. It was my sister's friend, her best friend, who he tried to do that too. And she pushed him in our pool and then went home and told her mom, like, you're supposed to, right? Like, and the mom called our parents and basically was like, this is disgusting. How dare, like, never let her go back to the house again. My mom finally, not finally, because she didn't know, and I was freaked out. And in a weird way, this guy groomed me. So like, he wasn't hurting me physically, but he brainwashed me to think that, this is when my mom already remarried my stepdad. And so like, he was like a father figure. He was a retired mailman. Ugh, so creepy. I know. And, he basically, would not, like, he never had intercourse with me. It was very much like, it was more of an intimate, weird relationship. So when I testified against him, I was going through these feelings of like, why am I doing this to somebody who is like my father, you know? And so I think the more dangerous part of it all, I'm not comparing it, but like, it's just the grooming side. And they know, these pedophiles know when to do it. They do it when you're young and you're able to be groomed.
Well, yeah, because we're so easily manipulated at that age, right? Because there's a lot of trust and safety that we put into adults in general. And I think that I'm glad you brought up the term grooming, because I feel like that's the piece that's missing from a lot of people understanding. Because I mean, I've had viewers talked about how they were in love with their abusers, and they go to prison or whatever, right? Because it's illegal, and they belong in prison. And I want to spit in the faces of each of them.
And mine got out, but he's no longer alive. But like, I mean, I don't understand how these people even let people out like that. But anyway,
I know, why isn't that life? I don't know. Same. I don't understand. But I think a lot of people don't understand that part of it. Like, why wouldn't you hate them? And why wouldn't? And
then you feel shamed. You feel shameful for even like, wait, I have compassion towards this person who has hurt me and many. Yeah.
But the people don't understand the relationship, the dynamic. Like you said, you felt like he was like a father figure.
Yeah. I actually didn't understand the word grooming until I saw Oprah did a special on grooming. And like these, it was about Michael Jackson, I think. And she had people who have been sexually abused, all of them like were in her audience, her audience was all people who have been sexually abused, and basically talks about like fully talks about grooming. And I was like, oh, thank you. Because like now I was able to like have a little closure and not feel like I was like the only person who actually didn't want to put my molester in prison.
Yeah, but it's so powerful. I think that's to me like the magic of therapy, and the fact that now everything's so much more accessible. Yeah, like as someone who's older and remembers what it was like before the internet, I miss those days though. Same. But I also feel like kids have such a leg up on things like that, where you can get language. There's something so validating about having a word to put to something that you've experienced, and like you said, it not fully removes like the shame or the guilt or the embarrassment, but it lightens that load a little bit, because you're like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Well, I just felt so bad. Like I felt so disgusted with myself that I was just like, how? And then I even questioned, am I lying? Did this really happen to me? And at first, when I first came out about this, I wrote a book about like 6-7 years ago when I just did Dancing with the Stars. And I talked about my molestation. I remember doing an interview with Pierce Morgan, and he intimidated the crap out of me, right? Because like normally on Dancing with the Stars, we do it with our celebrity, and like they'll talk and we'll just be like arm candy and we're like, meh, don't have to talk. But then like I
never thought about it, but you're right.
Right? We're like those like Vanna White girls, like just not making as much money. Stuff on. And so that was easy. But then like when it was just one-on-one and I had to actually, like Ellen had me on to talk about this, I felt like I was testifying again. It was the weirdest feeling. And then I got all these like crazy ass emotions. Mind you, I was drinking like heavily back then. I'm now sober for 2.5 years, but like,
oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And so it was just really surreal, because like now that I've been sober, all of these crazy feelings from like back then, like when I was 4 or 5, are coming up, and because I didn't deal with them, I'm now dealing with them.
Yeah. And what is that like? So the thing that I get pushed back a lot from everybody, patients, viewers, even friends, is this worry that if I let it all out, or if I essentially take away the coping skills, right? Because I deal a lot with like self-injury and eating disorders in my private practice, and online we talk about everything, addiction, anything, right? All those numbings. When they remove it, everybody's always afraid that this huge wave of emotion is going to sweep in and ruin my whole life and like fucking wipe me out.
Totally. I'm there with them. Yeah.
And so what was that process like?
I mean, it's still going. I'm still going through it, right? Like now that I'm sober, I think I'm using other ways to numb, which is like not sleeping. I've never seen the sun come up so much sober than I did when I was messed up. Like, you know what I mean? So that has been a huge issue that I'm trying to work through. I don't know if it's self-sabotage, because like this is one of the questions I want to ask you. Like I actually enjoy not sleeping when everybody I know is asleep, right? Because I also have taken up this crazy obsession called diamond painting, and it's really crazy. And it's like rhinestoning a canvas is like paint by numbers. And I'm so obsessed that I will do it for hours, like hours.
And I cannot stop.
And I cannot, nope, can't stop. And arthritis and all, like it doesn't matter. But like, this is my drug, I think now. Now I'm like using that. And I wouldn't say, maybe it's self-sabotage, but it's not really, because I'm very aware and mindful of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it sabotage. I'd call it trading, numbing. Yeah, because the thing that I think a lot of us, even myself, like again, when I talk about things, I always tell people like,
totally.
I'm not perfect. No, I don't have my shit together. I'm still figuring it out. It's okay. I'm in therapy too.
Right.
So whatever.
Great.
But we trade off. Yes. So, okay. Like when I was a kid, for instance, and my parents went through a rough patch. That's how I ended up in therapy. Okay. Because I was so sure they were going to get divorced because all my friends' parents were getting divorced, and I was super anxious and freaking out. My mom was like, "Let's go talk to somebody." So thanks, Mom. Yeah. Saved my life, kind of helped me at least understand myself. Yeah. But so at that time, I remember, because I played soccer, I would like practice soccer like a maniac. Oh. Like I would just be doing it all the time. I still do not run for exercise to this day because it's not good for me. Like I know it's like you should be in
because then you'll be
like
obsessed with it. Okay.
It's like it's just part of how I used to cope. It's like that old thing. Yeah. Right. So it's still there. And so even though, and I know people probably don't like hearing this, because even though we recover from things, we still remember that old tool.
It's like that, right? That like adrenaline rush in a way.
Yeah. And you can like, you remember it and it's still there. It's like in your tool shed. It's covered in cobwebs and like, you don't really want to reach for it because you know what that means, but it's still there.
It's tempting.
Yeah. And so you switch it out with other things. Okay. So I wasn't running and doing soccer stuff as much anymore. Then I started to like journal, which was super helpful for me. And like, I would write poems and, you know, and I kept all my journals, which some of them are hilarious. Some are really sad, but still just funny from like young me. So sometimes I think that we're just trading out these coping skills that used to work for new ones, and they kind of work sometimes, but we can get like obsessed, hence the diamond painting. And so I
even
don't
if
think
it's like
sabotage.
A good obsession, like do you still avoid it like personally? So like running is not necessarily bad for you, right? Like unless if you've got bad knees, but like there's obviously way worse, like substance abuse and all of that. But like, even if it's a good addiction, you would recommend like maybe just being mindful of it at least, and just knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's the awareness, because it's not that you have to stay away from it and you'd have to let me know if this kind of answers the question. Because for me, if I feel the urge to do something a lot, like where I know it's obsessive, because you're aware,
like
I'm aware, right?
Painting, yeah.
You know, you're like, maybe this is
maybe I should
Cheryl,
go to sleep with my husband instead.
Yeah. Possibly. When that's happening to me and I feel that urge, I know it's an indicator of something larger, right? It's just a symptom. Yeah. And I'm like, and I'll even tell Sean sometimes, I'm like, I should probably call Jana, my therapist. I'm like,
got it.
Because I'll take breaks sometimes too.
Yeah.
And so, it's not like I'm in therapy like constantly since I was 15.
Right.
You run out of things to work on.
Yeah. Like years of gaps. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so if I'm in one of those gaps, I'm like, oh, I should call her. And if I'm not, I'm like, oh, I need to tell her about this.
Right. And if you are in therapy and you're still doing it, what do you do?
I think it's okay to keep doing it, but let your therapist know.
No, yeah, she knows.
And be aware, because it's an okay substitute. Again, it's not hurting anybody.
Right. Other than my sleeping patterns, but yeah.
Well, and then that's the thing. There's always consequences to it. Like for the running for me, I knew that it just like wasn't going to lead me anywhere good, because I can be so obsessive and so type A about things. And I was like, I don't really like how my body feels, like knees. Right. My knees do hurt.
Right. And so you have to work it out. So you try and figure out, like, you just do the work, right?
Yeah. For me, it means I need to express anger, because I don't feel good expressing anger.
Right.
So probably have to scream in my car and then cry in the shower and like let myself feel. Yeah. Because that's an indicator to me that I'm numbing out.
That's the hard part for me is like what I said earlier. It's just that feeling part of it. Like I even like hold back tears in front of the people I'm most comfortable with.
Oh, same. I'll like swallow it. I can
Right?
feel the tightness in my throat. And I'm like, this is not good. Like, again, I know
like-
it's not good.
Yeah, you're just like, you want to cry so bad, but then like Whitney Houston will come on and you're like dying. I'm like, why are you crying? I'm like, yeah, I know. I held it in for too long.
For too long. I'm watching a Hallmark commercial and I'm bawling.
Right.
Can't help myself.
Yes, I see my dog. I start crying. I love my freaking dog so much. It hurts.
Oh, yeah.
That's just another thing, you know, like I've never felt unconditional. It sounds crazy, but it's true. The love I have for my little dog is right. So we've had her for a year. It's like something I've never experienced before. Is that healthy?
I think that's healthy. It's like a fur baby. It's another member of your family.
But
I
it's
think
sickening. Like if she were to ever run away, I think I would actually die.
You'd be devastated.
If whatever happened to Lady Gaga happened to me, I mean, hopefully,
Oh, God,
I wasn't
I
the
know.
dog walker, but like, I would also give up my home. My home. Just take my home. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we love other creatures, other people.
That don't
I
talk
think
back. Love animals.
And it's something about dogs, and even my audience would be like cats too, but there's just something about dogs in particular where they,
I don't know about cats.
First of all, I mean, it depends on the cat, because my mom has a couple of good cats that are like pretty
don't turn on you?
sensitive to you. They
Yeah.
like know that you need a little cuddle and they'll come up and stuff. And there's something about that I think is like special.
There is,
And it's almost,
they don't judge you.
Exactly. And there's no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like talk back
At all. Yeah.
And you feel comfort from them. So I think
totally.
there's something special. So I don't think anything's wrong with that.
Okay.
Or your diamond painting, really. But I think it's a symbol. It's like a sign of numbing out.
Absolutely. And it's excessive. I'm very excessive. And it's a problem.
And that's the addictive part, you know? Okay, so I want to get
am
into
an addict.
Yes, because you said, that's what my next thing, you said your therapist doesn't agree.
Yeah. No, so she doesn't think I am an addict, but then I'm like, but I am excessive. And she says, look, I do believe addiction is a self-diagnosis. I don't necessarily, I don't know. I mean, if that's true, I do believe though that like only we know what we do, you know, as individuals. And like, look, I can tell you I'm excessive, but then I can also tell you like, you may, from the outside looking in, I mean, I've been with the same therapist for over a decade. And I guess like, it's not like I'm putting on a different personality, but only I know how excessive I am. You know, she's not here with me, you know, for nights and staying up. Like she's like, one time she was like, you know, I stayed up till really late and I thought of you. And I was like, oh, she thinks that like sleeping maybe for me is a sign of vulnerability. So maybe I'm not necessarily wanting to go there, right? Like just in general.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, sleep also, there's something about sleep too, that if we have trauma in our past that we still have to process, that time can be nightmares, flashbacks. We can be in full panic attack during our sleep.
You know what it is for me? I hate feeling lethargic. So like I used to be a really good sleeper, like 10 hours naps.
That's me. Yep.
In between. And because I've gone so long of getting like 4 or 5 hours max a night, I have this like weird FOMO in a way, but like FOMO of like, I've just learned to like love myself recently. So like, I'm loving myself right now. I'm loving my own company. And like, I just love, I'm addicted to productivity 100%, you know? So,
oh yeah. Again, another distraction, another numb out.
Yeah, no, totally. And I just like, again, like I don't feel guilty for not sleeping. But the only thing that I need to work on is making sure that like there is a time where my husband and I connect.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing about relationships is finding that time. And part of it, I mean, there's so many potential reasons why the sleep, like productivity, a huge one. And that feeling that like, especially in LA and in a lot of cities, it's that feeling of like constant.
When we're on vacation, I'm great. Like I'll sleep all day, night, but it's that feeling of like you're having, like when I land, whenever I'm like gone and I land in LAX or Burbank, my anxiety goes through the roof.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it's the expectations comparison is just the worst thing ever. But it's this is why I don't even look at Instagram anymore. Really, I just can't.
Well, it can be too toxic, right? Yeah. And then the one of my favorite quotes is "Comparison is a thief of joy."
Totally, but it's so hard
for you.
Not
it might be the thief of sleep.
Yeah. Totally. Yes, I agree. But let's go back to so do you not think addiction is not a self-diagnosis? Like you can pretty much diagnose someone who's an addict, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, not to disagree with your therapist because everybody
fine.
has a good view.
No, I think that. My therapist doesn't think that.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't specialize in addiction work, just FYI.
Okay.
But I have worked with addicts.
Okay.
And at the eating disorder treatment center that I worked at for many years, we had many addicts, very comorbid with each other, again, numbing out, right? And I've had addicts in like my friend group, family group, people in recovery, things like that. And it is a real
It's a real thing. It's a disease. Yeah.
And it is. It's a disease. And
it's not necessarily hereditary though, is it?
there is a hereditary component. Like you said, your dad was an alcoholic. So, it doesn't, everything hereditary just increases our likelihood.
Right.
But we still have to have what we would call like a precipitating event or something that would trigger it.
Interesting.
To cause it.
My co-host on Pretty Messed Up, our podcast, he is a recovering addict, but no one in his family has had any type of forms of addiction.
Oh, wow. And that's so rare too.
Right.
Somebody,
I know.
at least like if you dig back into uncles and grandpas, somebody had something.
Right. Go back to 23andMe, like just really check, double check.
Yeah, really double, triple check. No, I mean, but there's something that has to turn on those genes. And so if we don't have something to turn on those genes, even though we have them, it doesn't, we don't necessarily, it's not going to be active. We won't, subscribe to the addiction. Like for instance, my mom's father was an alcoholic and he recovered when I forget how old she was, but when I knew him, he never drank or anything.
Right.
And she's never drank either because of she's aware of what it is. And so I think that in a way she still has the genes, but she's never even entertained it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I do believe
but it's still it is a disease. Just because you stop the act of drinking doesn't mean that I'm no longer an addict.
No, you have other addictions. Right. And I was listening to Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert.
I listen to them religiously.
I love it. And there was one, this was probably like a year, maybe like actually it was
when he said that he's been taking opiates.
Yes. And that it was so even as a mental health professional, I know it's a disease. Right. I know it's a diagnosable thing, but that podcast opened my eyes to just how deep that pull is. I
didn't even hear that episode. I should hear it.
Yeah, I can send you the link to it. It's just so good. But I listened to it last November and it'd come out a couple weeks before that. Right. So I'll find it.
But what do you think of, because I've never been a part of the AA program because I'm so, I don't know why. I think because a lot of it's social anxiety, to stranger danger, I don't want to be around other new people and it's exhausting. So this is part of the reason why, sometimes I'll take big gaps with my therapist because most of it, when I know I need to go back, I'll probably wait it out even longer because it's God, I got to catch her up. It's so, there's it's just a lot, right? There's so much. And then I have the anxiety of it ain't cheap. So I'm
it's just,
okay, let me talk. And I'm diarrhea of the mouth, but then I'm I still don't feel satisfied. But then when you finally get back into the groove, it's fine. But I just feel because I'm so much into therapy, with couples therapy and then my own therapy once a week, I don't feel the need to go to an AA program. This is how the conversation started with my therapist. Cause I was do you think I should go? And this was the whole start of I don't think you're necessarily an addict. I think you're just excessive.
What's the difference?
I don't know.
Curious.
I don't know.
Because anything done to excess, I feel is addictive type behavior. Right. I think we think of addict as it's only drugs and alcohol, but hold up, let's think. Right. How about shopping? How about gambling? How about sex? How about
I realize that I'm also a sex and love addict, but not sex, the love part, for sure.
Yeah. You
especially being sober.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things that we can be addicted to. Diamond painting.
Totally. Yeah. No, I agree. But when I used to drink, it was never the drink. It was the feeling. And it wasn't I could control it. It never stopped. Okay. I think this is her reasoning now that I remember it all. She's saying that because I didn't let it take over my life, right? Like I still showed up to work on time. I never let it be the most important thing I would do. Like I had priorities, which definitely was not the drinking. The drinking would come like after I was done with the day, or I was trying to like fix how I felt because I felt so hungover, or my thoughts were like taking over my body. Or I had to go to a red carpet event, and the last thing I wanted to do was see freaking cameras in my face and like awkward, like just being so awkward. And so, but also I never let it, like I've never late, like not even a minute. I take pride in that, but that's also an addiction, I think, because I'm like weirdly never late. So she's like, because you didn't let it take over your life. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that is...
I mean, that's one
part
component
of it. Yeah.
We talk about functionality. If this is the reason that I don't love the DSM, like the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, because people want to check all these boxes, right? Okay, you've done this for this many months or this many years, and it's been affecting you. And one of the biggest things that's almost on every diagnosis is like impairs my ability to function. Your functioning wasn't impaired, but that was a
functioning alcoholic, though.
Yes, and there's a lot of people that are like that. You know,
that's the scary part. Like you wouldn't even know.
No, and I remember, this sounds really bad to say, and I'm not going to obviously give his name, but there's a psychiatrist that I had referred a patient to. And this is years and years ago, and it was a really tough case, and I was referring this patient to inpatient, and I wanted to meet with the psychiatrist. We had all approvals and stuff, and I could smell the booze on him.
No.
And it was like 2 p.m, like 1:30. And I was like, oh, are you finished for the day? He's like, oh no, I've got a whole, like, I don't finish till like 8 p.m. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I'm never going to refer people. I can't in good faith. Like, and I wouldn't have known that, right? Because phone calls, emails, everything
nowadays,
was fine.
You wouldn't know.
You'd have no idea. And the only reason I wanted to meet him in person is because we had like a longer conversation that needed to be had because this particular patient was having such a tough time. And
that's fascinating. You know, in a way I have a little, you know, for me, and this is what I realize as well with like keeping myself up, is like, if my mind is a little foggy, I tend to do interviews better, or I tend to like not be so much in my head. But when I get enough sleep and I'm healthy and my brain is clear, I tend to stumble over my words. It's the weirdest thing. And I think, I don't know if that's the case. Yeah, it's anxiety. I have major anxiety. But like, I think that when I'm a little off, my anxiety has lessened because it's more about survival.
100%. Yeah. And I think that, again, like for you, it's the trauma work.
Yeah.
And that shit's so uncomfortable.
Shit is so uncomfortable.
And it takes so long. And fuck, man, if we want to
relive it again. And I honestly don't even think I've mourned any of it. Like I can say all of it. Like it's so hard. But like I'm still, sometimes I think I'm telling someone else's story.
Oh, yeah. The disconnect, right?
Yeah, I'm so good at it.
I have a book coming out this September called Traumatized. And I did a ton of research because I'm not out in practice like a trauma specialist. I wouldn't consider myself, you know, even though obviously through eating disorder, self-injury work, I've worked with a lot of patients that way. But anyway, in doing my research, I found that I want to say the statistic, and not that I even believe in all statistics, but only 60% of people find benefit from being able to tell their story in a narrative form. Which as a therapist, we're taught that like, oh, that's part of the healing process, putting in language to it, giving it a timeline, all of that stuff. And it's beneficial, but it doesn't necessarily mean we heal.
You're healing. Right. How do you heal?
So I think that's where we have to kind of try something new, like
breath work,
EMDR.
Yes.
I am a huge advocate, the more research I've done and the more work I've done in really digging into, and everybody who's listening is going to hate this, but inner child work.
Oh my God. That's exactly what I'm working on right now with my therapist. It's like loving loving that girl that just let it happen.
Yeah. And being able to, like, photos can help pull you back.
That is so uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable because I'm like, you know how much like people think I'm mean, like when I teach, right? The celebrities on the show, which I'm not like mean. I'm just like, I'm strict, right? But then like you should hear what I say to myself. Like it's 100 times worse. But yeah, no, you're definitely on the right path because that is the most uncomfortable thing in the world.
Well, yeah, because, and not for nothing, I even think that those of us who even haven't been traumatized need to do that work.
Of course. Because something happened, there's a different, you can't measure it. Like everyone's been traumatized.
Yeah.
Whether that be like you being bullied or someone looking at you weird, it doesn't even matter. Like there's something in your childhood that you definitely remember as like a not so good memory, I think.
100%. And also I think we need to tap into our inner child because they have so much to teach us.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
That we like don't want to listen. And so our inner child tantrums.
Yes. Which is I have so many.
Which is when we can do
don't get what you want. You're like,
yeah, you like want to stomp your feet,
or I'm a really mean person. Yep, I'm mean with my words.
Yep, and I get that way too, where I will stuff it down until I erupt into like an explosion of like anger,
and
hatred.
I black out for a second, and I'm like,
same
dissociation. Did I just say
like,
that?
Don't remember any of it.
Scary. La, la, la. Multiple personality disorder, maybe.
At least your brain pulling the ripcord where it's like, this is a little much.
At least I acknowledged it, honey.
Exactly, right? But there's a lot of ways we tantrum, and I think tapping into and giving a voice to that child and being able to communicate with that part of ourselves, because we all have it.
So how do you do it? Like, what is the first step?
Everybody's going to be different. So the way that I usually start with my patients, and it's like a trial run to see if they can do it this way, is to try to write letters back and forth.
Like love letters?
Just letters of like you're writing a pen pal.
Okay. Like you're a mentor to somebody? But it's you. Yeah.
And so I always tell them, like, if you can find a photo of you around that time, if it's not too triggering, it's great to look at that while you write the letter, you know, and you can even you could call, you know, little Cheryl a different name if you wanted.
Actually, on my YouTube channel, I am reading my not love letter, but like, dear little CB. And I just read it out loud. It's interesting. It was actually very triggering for me, and it was hard for me to read it, that I just went straight to the disconnect just to be able to get through it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think being able to stay connected slowly, get through that.
Yeah. It starts with little things. Like I could easily look at myself in the mirror and say, I love you. And I just said, I love myself 5 minutes ago. But do I really love myself? Like the little girl inside me. I think I love myself now, but that doesn't count.
Well, yeah. Like, do you accept her?
Right. Her like insecurities and jealousy and trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. And shame, thinking something's wrong with her. I did this book. Or I liked it. Like, that's another thing a lot of my viewers have told me is like, but if I orgasmed when I was abused, does that mean I enjoyed it?
Right.
And I'm like, I feel like your body betrays you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, physiological responses are not the same as emotional ones.
Okay.
And, you know.
And your body, you change every 7 years. Like, I think your whole identity, cells, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I always like to think we shed past skins of ourselves because we literally
don't know this.
But tapping into that little you who sustained all that and was so confused, right? And sometimes seeing a photo of yourself at that age, or for me, like my husband and I aren't having children, but a lot of our friends have children, seeing them at that age, like little kids, and you realize just how young 4 is.
And how important it is.
Yes. And there's part of that I know, and I know my audience listening is like, this is so uncomfortable, Katie.
Really?
I could not, you know, to do that work is hard.
Yeah. And just to hear it sometimes is hard.
100%. But I think it's also super healing. And I think that's really where the work comes in.
I agree.
For us.
Have you heard of the book Healing by John, forgot his last name. Hold on. I have to. So he basically has you. I haven't finished it yet because it was very triggering, to be honest. But I'm listening to it on Audible, my favorite, because I've got too much ADD to read.
That's fair.
Okay, it's called "Healing" by David Elliott.
Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't read that one book that there's a few books that I read for my book.
But
the one that was, I don't know if you've heard of Body Keeps the Score.
I think so, but I haven't read it.
It's by this guy. His name is very different. I can send you the link to it. It's just The Body Keeps the Score. It's a big, thick blue book. It's a lot to get through. I'll be honest. Like, you know, those books that you have to like digest as you go. Cause you're like, oh my God. I even feel that way with Brené Brown's work where it's like,
you have to read 100 times. Like you hear something new every time.
100%. And like you want to dog ear different things or highlight different things. And it's no different. His book is no different, but it's another hard but helpful read. And I think the thing that's great about The Body Keeps the Score is that the validation, because he so thoughtfully weaves in not only patient stories, but also research. So the like type A weirdo that I am, I'm like, there's a reason that this is happening. So so I'm not crazy or this response isn't weird. There's actually science to back up why, you know.
Do you believe in meditation and like and breath and breathing exercises? I mean, obviously 100%. You believe in breathing,
but there's research behind it too.
Yeah, like there's science behind meditation.
Yes. And it actually shrinks your amygdala over time, which is your fire alarm, like the tantruming toddler.
Fascinating.
And so you won't go into fight, flight, freeze as often, which for those who are traumatized, you feel like you live in that.
And that's the danger zone. And like, to be honest, when you have to sit, like when someone mentioned it to me, meditation a few years ago, I was like, you're out of your mind. I can't sit in stillness and I need my cell phone attached to my hip at all times. But I took this course. I'm not getting paid for this, but it's amazing. Ziva Online, and her name's Emily Fletcher. It's like a 2-week course, 20 minutes each day of how to do mantra meditation. And you just sit in stillness. You do it twice a day. It's kind of like transcendental. Never have done that either, but it sounds like it's similar. And just like you go through this unstressing phase. And man, she's like, just promise that you don't divorce. You don't make any like crazy decisions during like this month period of unstressing.
Interesting.
And boy, did I unstress. Like I was fragile.
That's interesting. And the not making big decisions, because I do know that when we're in our stress response, fight, flight, freeze, we're not supposed to make decisions either, because we know if the amygdala is firing, if we're hypervigilant, if we feel in that fight, flight response, your prefrontal cortex is offline.
Right.
Now your prefrontal cortex is like, I call it like the adult in your brain. It's the one that can organize, it can plan for the future, and it can essentially it's part of your personality as well, but it's more like putting language and communicating to people. So if that's offline,
what are you doing?
You don't know what you're doing. Yeah. That's why sometimes when we act out of that, we're like, we'll have no recollection.
Right.
Or we'll do things
like I said, blackout. Like that's that's the reason, right?
Yeah. And it's like not in character for you.
She does these like breathing exercise where you like,
one nostril.
And then the other one, just to like get your left and right brain to be like working together. It is crazy because sometimes my equilibrium will be off, and I'm just very aware of my body because I'm a dancer, obviously. And I'm just like, and then I'll just like do this for 5 minutes and it'll be night and day. You know, when you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yep.
This is why I don't
100%.
sleep. I'm kidding. But who wants that feeling? But like I'll do that and it really does balance everything out.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Cause I do a lot of yoga, like personally, that helps. Like, I feel like it saves my life all the time. Yeah. But we do that breathing, this one and this one. And that's really interesting that helps with that as well. So
I'm like in that book, that healing book, I'm at that point where it's like, okay, now it's time to like go on his website and learn this breathing exercise. But my friend who recommended me this book, she was like, be ready to just be so emotional. And I'm like, run.
You're like, no, abort mission.
I think I've read the first half of the book 1,000,000 times. I'm like, oh God, I'm here. Can't do it. Have to do this interview now. So sorry.
Got to put it away.
Yeah, it's scary.
Well, I think it's okay. And this is something that I've been doing since COVID in particular, because I felt so emotionally overwhelmed for so long, which is not a normal state for me, I guess. Okay. Is setting a timer for like 10 or 20 minutes and just letting myself do the emotion work then, and that's it. And then the timer goes off.
Is that pressure? Is it pressure though? Kind of like, are you like, okay,
I mean,
now cry?
It depends. No, well, sometimes it is like that and nothing will come of it.
Right, right.
I'll think, I guess nothing was
It's like your meditation, basically. Like when I sit down in the morning for 15 minutes, sometimes I'll just cry randomly.
Totally. You just never know what's going to come up.
Right.
But if I start to feel like really overwhelmed and like I want to cry watching like a commercial or something, I'm just like completely emotionally full.
Yeah.
Then I'll be like, do I have time today? Can I just squeeze something in? And I'll just let it happen. Good. As long as I don't have like makeup that I have to attend to.
Or like fake lashes that you have to
keep
that
will
on your
like
eye.
run off your face. Yeah.
Not cute. Totally.
Not cute.
This is very helpful.
Did you have any other questions?
Tons, but I don't think we have 20 hours. But
no, but you can go through them. Okay. I'll do my questions that I pulled in another podcast.
Okay, great.
Easy peasy.
Are you still active?
I
am. Zoom?
I know. I am still active, but not very.
No,
because of the move. Yeah.
Right.
I'm trying to decide what I want to do with that, to be honest. I'll keep my license
you are
activating.
doing it. This is what you're doing. Like, this is like you talking and like helping people be aware more about their mental health. I think this is like part of the work, right?
Yeah. I think it's just, it's part of me letting go of the potential that maybe I won't have a private practice for a while.
Okay.
And I think it's me like grieving it a
Right.
little. Even though I would have never thought that what I'm doing is something I could do. It's my own like my own therapy work where I'm like identity and like what
it's also probably better to talk to somebody that like have that like connection. But like, I don't think you realize how many people you're helping, which is, on a bigger stream, like of just like wanting to, it's hard. Cause like, even as a dance teacher, like, I'm like, but I'm only helping this one person. It's like, I want to be able to relate it to mental health because it is a thing, and like I said earlier, it's just, there's something about helping the masses instead of just an individual person.
It's true. That's the cool thing about social media. Like even though I don't always love it, that's like the silver lining of it is the ability to reach people, right? Because if I was just in Santa Monica with my private practice, the maximum number of people I could see, I mean, I would never do 40 because I think that's like, I couldn't do enough research and reading on my own. So I'd probably do 30, but that's 30 people a week and that's it.
How do you guys, I've always wondered this, like with therapists, like, do you take in the emotion like of your patients? Like, how do you release, like, how do you disconnect and not disconnect, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's healthy boundaries, really. And I think the thing, I truly believe that some people are made to do it and some people are not. But for me, healthy boundaries are key. I always communicate those with patients as much as I can, as often as I need to. And then I think the fact that your patients don't know you personally, it automatically keeps that distance.
For sure. Like I've known my therapist for 10 years, but I don't know her at all.
Exactly. And it's better that way. It's better for you. It's better for her.
Yeah.
And it has been tricky with COVID being at home and working from home because I used to enjoy that time between my office and home where I would, it's almost like shed the therapist in me, like take off my cardigan and like come home and be like, I'm not therapist Kati anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always work. I mean, I still have like
cardigan.
12 cardigans.
I mean, look at my freaking cardigan. I mean, I'm sweating my tits off.
I know.
There.
I'm sweating also. It's so schwitzy.
Shoulder pads, makes you look like you're sitting up straight for some reason. I don't know.
It does.
It's really weird. I've got like football shoulders right now, but it's great. Love it.
But yeah, so I think that's how I keep it separate. In the same way, I'm sure you keep your work separate in other ways.
I'm going to lose my number.
Yeah, well, because you're not your husband's
I'm not my bitchy
teacher.
self. Like seriously, like everyone's like, would your husband would you dance with him on Dancing with the Stars? I was like, not if we want to stay together. Like there's I had to have chaperones for our first dance for our wedding. Cause I was like, you do not want to see me in the dance studio. It's not pretty.
Yeah. You need other people there.
Yeah.
That's fine. Need buffer.
Yeah, totally.
So any more questions? I think we have time for one more. If you got one.
Well, how do I know when I'm actually really being vulnerable? Like what? Yeah, that's probably a big question, but.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I guess for like, and now I'm digging into personal experience because everybody's going to be different. But I think you're being vulnerable when you feel a little scared about that being out there. Does that make sense?
Right. Whether that's being vulnerable to yourself or to just another person.
Either way, I think it's like the fact, I don't think vulnerability, I know Brené Brown talks about it so easily.
Well, she's done so much research on it, but
I know, but I'm like, as a person in the world, I'm like, holy shit.
Like would you start out, like, for instance, I can't sing. I am tone deaf and I will not even sing to myself in the shower because I'm embarrassed of my own voice. Right.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe is that like a start?
I think that'd be like a little baby step in, like we're putting our toe in the water of vulnerability.
Right.
I think also the biggest thing for people, and you might disagree, but from my experience and being online, I think the best way to be vulnerable is to be honest
and accountable.
Pick a person. Yeah. Pick a person in your life. Be honest with how you actually feel. Even just a smidgen. Like, let's say.
But how do you know that? How do you even know if you're honest? That's a deep question.
No, it's like,
because
it's
like
hard,
if you're
though,
so good at like numbing, if you're so good at like what's the word?
Like disconnecting.
There you go. How do you even know what's like the difference?
I guess it's like the conversation that you have with yourself.
Yeah.
Letting someone into that a little bit. Because even though we might be on autopilot, And it's like if music is playing in the other room and you don't really hear the lyrics and you don't really know what's going on, it's still happening. And if we can walk a little bit closer so you can actually hear that.
Right.
If you can do that, and that's its own work, right? But like, I think if we let somebody into that honest conversation that we have with ourselves, like, because my inner voice is like, she's an asshole. She's really rude.
Oh, it's
she's
so
super
judgmental. I am the same person. I'm like a bully.
Yeah, totally. And I would never talk to anybody else that way.
No.
But it's just and I wouldn't let anyone talk to me that way either, which is very strange.
Right.
But if I, like with Sean, for instance, if I let him in on that a little bit and say something to the effect, let's say like, I don't like the way that I look, you know,
and just leave it at that without being like even more self-deprecating. Cause I find that self-deprecating for me is
a distraction.
100%. I'm trying to get a laugh or something, but really it's like, that's how I truly feel about myself. And it's actually sad to watch.
But it's hard to let people in a real way with information that you know could hurt you.
And
because that's vulnerability,
it
right?
all goes back to trust, right? Like, it's like, I've got trust issues clearly. And, you know,
rightfully so.
Right. And it's not necessarily because of anything other than myself and the trauma that has happened. So I guess what are the steps? So it's like, is it trust? Is it like trusting yourself first and then the vulnerability, or is it vulnerability first and then trust?
I think it could actually go either way, which I know people probably hate that answer, but I think it kind of depends on you, because part of even just being vulnerable doesn't mean that you necessarily trust yourself.
Right.
You're just like acknowledging and sharing.
Yeah.
But
God, it's complicated.
You could do. It is. I mean, emotions in life, it's so complicated. But at the end of the day, I feel like as long as we are open to letting people really know us, just open to it. I would talk about bridge statements is like, it doesn't have to happen, but I'm open to the possibility that it could.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe someday, right?
Right.
As long as we're open to that, then we can let people who are worthy get to know us. Like one of the answers I gave, I think it was like on a couple podcasts ago, was like coming up with a list of what your onion layers would be.
Oh,
like
so
what
many.
are you fine with people who don't know you knowing? You know, what I do for a living.
It could be really even as easy as just don't wear makeup one day and see what happens. Like, I think that's why like Alicia Keys, for instance, she went through that where it was like, you know, this is who I am, and whether you like it or not. I think it's also not looking for validity through other people and outside sources.
100%. And I think a lot of that comes with that vulnerability and trust and letting people know you. Yeah. And knowing that nothing bad's going to happen because you're not perfect.
And it also starts with the book that you're definitely writing, because it's like, it really is like, you have to love yourself first. Yeah. Before you can even love anyone else.
And that's the hard work, you know? And I think part of that love, going back to like kind of full circle, is like acknowledging that inner child, loving on him, listening to them.
And not judging him.
Yeah. Just letting it be what it is. Because that really is like actually nurturing yourself.
And that's being vulnerable. Girl.
Yeah. I know. It's hard work.
Great. Man. I love it.
Yeah. But thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
And thank you for having me. I mean, you're my new bestie, so we should like DM each other or something, whatever people do nowadays. Yeah.
Of course. Okay. So stay connected.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And where can people find you if they want to listen, watch?
Yeah. You can go to my website, Cheryl-Burke.com. That could totally be wrong, by the way. It could just be who knows? Well, then you can go to my Instagram page at Cheryl Burke. I do have a YouTube channel. I talk all about mental health, and then there's some like light stuff as well. It's basically Cheryl Burke Uncensored. And then you can also go to Twitter, Facebook. I've got it all. And that's about it. It's just my name, Cheryl Burke.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I'll link stuff in the description. So
thank you.
Through.
Thank you for your time.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your work. Bye.